Employees calls his boss to tell him he can't come in for work today because he's sick. The boss tells the employee, "Whenever I get sick, I have sex with my wife." Maybe try that? Later that day, the employee calls his boss and said, "Thanks for the tip. I feel so much better now. Also, you have a nice house." A coworker of mine comes up to me. He says, "What's up, man? I have a question for you." "Okay." I reply, "Imagine you go camping with some other guys. One night, you all are doing a lot of drinking. You wake up in the morning with your pants down to your ankles and Vaseline in your butthole. Would you tell anybody about that?" He asks, "Hell no." I answer, "Great." He says, "Wanna go camping?" Two idiots are painting the roof of the barn when it catches on fire. The only way down is to jump into the manure pile. The first idiot says, "I'll jump first and tell you how deep it is." He jumps, and a few seconds later the second idiot hears, "It's only ankle deep." The second idiot jumps and says, "What on earth?" "I'm up to my neck." And the first idiot says, "Well, you jumped feet first." An elderly woman decided it was time to have her portrait painted. As she sat down, she gave the artist very specific instructions. "Please paint me wearing diamond earrings, a diamond necklace, emerald bracelets, a ruby brooch, and a gold Rolex." The artist, puzzled, looked at her and said, "But you're not actually wearing any of those things." With a mischievous smile, she replied, "I know. This way, if I die before my husband, he'll likely remarry quickly, and I want his new wife to go mad searching for the jewelry." An army officer is having a heartfelt conversation with his wife in the kitchen before heading off for another long deployment. "Sweetheart, I'm about to be away for another year." "Oh, I'll miss you terribly." "I'll miss you too," he says with a mischievous glance at her chest. "And these lovely ladies of yours." Blushing, she suggests, "Why not give them a little attention now to make up for the coming year?" His face lights up. "Absolutely. I'll dedicate a squeeze for every month I'll be away." He begins, May, squeeze, June, squeeze, July, and so on, naming every month. Suddenly, he notices their 10-year-old son, Michael, standing beside them. Hastily retracting his hands, the wife exclaims, "Oh my goodness, Michael, when did you get here?" After a moment of thoughtful silence, the kid responds, Mid-September? A young woman decided she wanted to try ice fishing. She bought all the gear, bundled up, and headed out to what she thought was the perfect frozen spot. She set up her stool, pulled out her tools, and began cutting a big circle in the ice, just like she'd seen online. Suddenly, a deep voice thundered all around her. "There are no fish under the ice." Startled, she looked around. No one. So she packed up, moved further down, and started again. Once more, the voice boomed, "There are no fish under the ice." Now nervous but determined, she dragged her gear to the far end of the ice, sat down, and cut another hole. Immediately, the voice rang out louder than ever. "There are no fish under the ice." Terrified, she jumped up and shouted, "Is that you, God?" The voice replied, "No, this is the manager of the skating rink. And I'm telling you, there are no fish under the ice." One evening after work, I drove my secretary home since her car would not start. I decided not to bother my wife, Jane, so did not mention it to her. Later that night, I was driving out with Jane to eat when I noticed a high-heeled shoe hidden under the passenger seat. Pointing to something out the passenger window to distract my wife, I picked up the shoe and tossed it out of my window. We arrived at the restaurant a short time later and were about to get out of the car when Jane asked, "John, have you seen my other shoe?" A mother-in-law said to her son's wife when the baby was born, "I don't mean to be rude, but he doesn't look anything like my son." The daughter-in-law lifted up her skirt and said, "I don't mean to be rude either, but this is a fanny, not a photocopier." Ralph and Edna were both patients in a mental hospital. One day, while they were walking past the hospital swimming pool, Ralph suddenly jumped into the deep end. He sank to the bottom of the pool and stayed there. Edna promptly jumped in to save him. She swam to the bottom and pulled him out. When the head nurse director became aware of Edna's heroic act, she immediately ordered her to be discharged from the hospital, as she now considered her to be mentally stable. When she went to tell Edna the news, she said, "Edna, I have good news and bad news. The good news is you're being discharged, since you were able to rationally respond to a crisis by jumping in and saving the life of the person you love. I have concluded that your act displays sound-mindedness. The bad news is Ralph hung himself in the bathroom with his bathrobe belt right after you saved him. I am so sorry, but he's dead." Edna replied, "He didn't hang himself. I put him there to dry. How soon can I go home?" After a fight, my girlfriend wanted to know where we stood. I told her I loved her like Vin Diesel loves Paul Walker. She got all giddy and told me how much she loves me too. I looked at her with confusion and clarified, "What I meant was you're dead to me." A lady went to her priest and said, "Father, I have a problem. I have 2 female parrots, but they only know how to say one thing." "What do they say?" asked the priest. "They only say, 'Hi, we're prostitutes.' Want to have some fun?" "That's terrible," said the priest. "But I have a solution. Bring them to my house. I have 2 male parrots I've taught to pray with rosary beads and read the Bible. They'll teach your parrots to worship." The next day, the woman brings her parrots. She puts them in the cage with the priest's parrots who are praying. Immediately, the female parrots squawk, "Hi, we're prostitutes. Want to have some fun?" One male parrot looks at the other and says, "Put the beads away, our prayers have been answered." A man gets a call from the hospital telling him his wife has been hurt in an accident. He rushes to the hospital and is met by her doctor. The doctor says, "I'm sorry, she's in really bad shape." Husband starts to tear up and asks, "How bad is it, doctor?" The doctor tells him that she's a paraplegic and there's little hope of recovery. Husband sits down and starts sobbing. The doctor puts his hand on the husband's shoulder and starts to describe how the wife will have to be fed, bathed, diaper changed, etc. for the rest of her life. The husband is inconsolable now. He can barely breathe at this point. Finally, the doctor smiles and says, "Nah, I'm just kidding, she died." A couple goes to the civil registry, specifically to get married, and among many requirements, they are asked to provide their address. The notary asks, "In which sector do you live?" And the woman asks, "Him or me?" "You, in the Reforma sector." And he, also. "What is the name of the street where you live?" The woman asks, "Him or me?" "You, Independence." And he, also. "What is the number of your house?" The woman asks, "Whose? His or mine?" "Yours, number 104. And his?" "Also." By this point, the notary was fed up and very angry. He says, "Miss, if you live in the same place, why do you ask if it's you or him?" "Oh, well, it's because I've been living there for 2.5 years. And he, also." A duck walks into a store. "Got any duct tape?" The owner answers, "No, and get out of here, you dumb duck." The duck comes back in a little while later, wearing a fake mustache. "Got any duct tape?" "No, and get out, I won't tell you again," the owner shouts. A while later, the duck comes back with a hat and glasses. "Got any duct tape?" "No, you stupid duck. And if you ask me again, I'll staple your beak to the floor." The duck pauses. Got any staples? No. Got any duct tape? Preto arrived home after a long shopping trip and was horrified to find her husband, Banta, in bed with a young, lovely thing. Just as she was about to storm out of the house, Banta stopped her with these words. Before you leave, I want you to hear how this all came about. Driving home, I saw this young girl, looking poor and tired. I offered her a ride. She was hungry, so I brought her home and fed her some of the roast you had forgotten about in the refrigerator. Her shoes were worn out, so I gave her a pair of your shoes you didn't wear because they were out of style. She was cold, so I gave her that new birthday sweater you never wore even once because the color didn't suit you. Her slacks were worn out, so I gave her a pair of yours that you don't fit into anymore. Then, as she was about to leave the house, she paused and asked, Is there anything else that your wife doesn't use anymore? And so here we are. A man unexpectedly brings his best friend home for dinner at 5:30 after work. His wife starts yelling while his friend quietly listens. My hair and makeup aren't done. The house is a mess. The dishes aren't washed. I'm still in my pajamas. And I'm definitely not in the mood to cook tonight. Why on earth did you bring him home? The husband replies, Because he's thinking about getting married. A stoner found a dirty old lantern and decided to give it a rub. To his surprise, a genie appeared in a puff of smoke. The genie thanked him for setting him free and said, I can grant you 3 wishes. What's your first wish? The stoner thought for a moment and said, I wish me and you could smoke a nice fat joint together. Instantly, a perfect joint appeared, and they both lit up and enjoyed it. When they were finished, the genie asked, Okay, what about wish number 2? The stoner grinned and said, Let's smoke another one. Just like before, another joint magically appeared, and they shared it happily. Finally, the genie said, You have one last wish. What will it be? The stoner smiled and replied, One more joint, man. And so they lit up a third time and smoked together under the sun. When the last puff was gone, the genie disappeared back into the lantern, leaving the stoner alone. 5 minutes later, the genie suddenly reappeared and said, I can grant you 3 wishes. What is your first wish? Fuck, you are so tight, I whisper as I do my budget for the month. Give it to me. I'm so wet, she screamed at me. But I wasn't going to give anyone my umbrella. A man went to the doctor. He said, Doc, you gotta check my leg. Something's wrong. Just put your ear up to my thigh, you'll hear it. The doctor cautiously placed his ear to the man's thigh, only to hear, Give me $20, I really need $20. I've never seen or heard anything like this before. How long has this been going on? The doctor asked. That's nothing, Doc. Put your ear to my knee. The doctor put his ear to the man's knee and heard it say, Man, I really need $10. Just lend me $10. Sir, I really don't know what to tell you. I've never seen anything like this. The doctor was dumbfounded. Wait, Doc, that's not it. There's more. Just put your ear up to my ankle, the man urged him. The doctor did as the man said and was blown away to hear his ankle plead, Please, I just need $5. Lend me $5, please, if you can. I have no idea what to tell you, the doctor said. There's nothing about it in my books, he said as he frantically searched all his medical reference books. I can make a well-educated guess, though. Based on life and all my previous experience, I can tell you that your leg appears to be broke in 3 places. Jim and Mary were both patients in a mental hospital. One day, while they were walking past the hospital swimming pool, Jim suddenly jumped into the deep end. He sank to the bottom and stayed there. Mary promptly jumped in to save him. She swam to the bottom and pulled Jim out. When the medical director became aware of Mary's heroic act, he immediately ordered her to be discharged from the hospital, as he now considered her to be mentally stable. When he went to tell Mary the news, he said, "Mary, I have good news and bad news. The good news is you're being discharged because, since you were able to jump in and save the life of another patient, I think you've regained your senses. The bad news is, Jim, the patient you saved hung himself with his bathrobe belt in the bathroom. I am so sorry, but he's dead." Mary replied, "He didn't hang himself. I put him there to dry." Three friends are chatting about interest rates. The first man says, "The Fed is killing me. I took out a $50,000 home equity line of credit to put in that swimming pool." The second man says, "Dude, I took out $100K for my Reno, and it ended up costing $200K. They look at the third guy. "What about you?" "I took out a $500K line of credit and invested it in crypto." "Wow," says the first friend. "You must be rolling in it." "That was the plan," replied the first, "but I invested it last week." While grocery shopping, an elderly lady asked the young produce man if she could have 1/2 of a head of lettuce. "Half of head? We really don't do that," replied the young man. "You see," she continued, "I really don't eat very much and half of it always goes bad. I thought that maybe someone else could make use of it." "Well," the man started to say, rather than throw it away, she insisted. Seeing that this woman was not going to give up, the young man went to the back of the store to ask the produce manager what to do. "This idiot woman keeps nagging me about wanting 1/2 of a head of lettuce," he shouted in protest. He had no sooner spoken than he saw that the woman had followed him. She had heard everything. "And this is the nice lady who wants the other half. : A retired teacher was sitting on a park bench when a stranger walked up and asked, "Do you remember me?" The teacher shook his head. "I'm afraid not." The man smiled. "I was once in your class." "Oh? And what do you do now?" the teacher asked. "I became a teacher because of you." Curious, the old man leaned in. "Because of me? How so?" The younger man nodded and began his story. "Back in school, I slipped a classmate's wallet into my own pocket. When he noticed it was missing, he went straight to you. You didn't yell, accuse, or embarrass anyone. Instead, you asked all of us to line up and close our eyes while you searched our pockets. When you found the wallet in mine, you quietly removed it and kept checking everyone else so no one would know who had taken it. Afterwards, you simply said, 'The wallet has been found. That's all that matters.' And you never mentioned it again. That moment changed me. You taught me a lesson without ever saying a word. You corrected me without humiliating me. That day I promised myself I would live differently, and one day teach the way you taught." The old teacher smiled softly and said, "I don't remember the thief, because I kept my eyes closed, too." And then he added, "True teaching is not just about lessons, it's about protecting dignity while guiding someone to grow." An old man meets a young man who asks, "Do you remember me?" The old man responds, "No, I don't." The young man then tells him, "I was your student." The teacher asks, "What do you do now? What's your life like?" The young man replies, "Well, I became a teacher." "Ah, that's wonderful. Just like me?" asks the old man. "Yes, exactly. I became a teacher because you inspired me," says the young man. Curious, the old man asks, "When did you decide to become a teacher?" The young man begins to recount a story. "One day, a friend of mine, also a student, came to class with a beautiful new watch, and I decided I wanted it. So I stole it from him, took it right out of his pocket. Soon after, my friend realized his watch was missing and immediately told you, our teacher. You then said to the class, This student's watch was stolen today. Whoever took it, please return it. I didn't give it back because I didn't want to. You then closed the door and told everyone to stand up and form a circle. You said you were going to search each of our pockets until the watch was found. But you told us to close our eyes while you did the search, saying that you would only search for the watch if we all kept our eyes shut. We followed your instructions. You went from pocket to pocket, and when you reached mine, you found the watch and took it. You continued searching everyone's pockets, and when you were done, you said, "Open your eyes. We have the watch." You never told anyone I was the thief, nor did you scold me. You didn't even give me a moral lesson. You just let me learn on my own. That was the most humiliating day of my life. But it was also the day I decided never to steal again or become a bad person. You saved my dignity without saying a word, and that taught me the most important lesson of all. Do you remember that day, Professor? The old professor nodded and replied, "Yes, I remember the situation with the stolen watch, but I don't remember you because while I searched, I also closed my eyes." A man is sitting in his chair, engrossed in his newspaper, when suddenly, whack, his wife smacks him on the back of the head with a frying pan. Startled, he spins around and exclaims, "What was that for?" She holds up a slip of paper and says, "I found this in your jacket pocket. It has Betty written on it." He sighs in relief and explains, "Oh, honey, remember last week when I went to the racetrack? Betty was the name of the horse I placed a bet on." She nods, seeming satisfied, and walks away. 3 days later, he's back in his chair reading the paper when, whack, the frying pan makes another appearance. Rubbing his head, he shouts, "Now what was that for?" She glares at him and says, "Your horse called."